and we were talking about the future of content creation. And I feel like I'm always ahead of the game when it comes to ideas. I just have to say that. but but we both decided that I think that yes, while some companies and brands do work best with, working with creators, that I think the future of content creation is that some brands need to start building their own content creation ecosystem, meaning that they need to rely less on creators and build their own content and build their own strategy to keep within their ecosystem. So, what I'm doing now is I'm kind of pitching myself to companies that I know and like I trust, to become kind of like a content strategist for them in order to help them build that. Because there's so many creators now and there's so many different types of creators. But the one thing I think brands need to do now is become their own creator, if that makes sense.
Hello, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Chief Networking Officer at PIMS, and welcome to our second season of Minutes with Mike. Now in my 33rd year at PIMS, I've had the privilege of partnering with companies both large and small, supporting their PR and marketing through customized fulfillment and distribution that delivers measurable impact on their brand perception, boosts positive affinity, and fuels their overall brand performance. And throughout my career, I've had the chance to work alongside many talented folks. This is their story. On this show, we'll sit down with some of the world's top marketing and business thought leaders to learn more about their success, how they got there, how marketing helped them achieve their goals, what strategies they used, and what inspires them. Please join me on this journey as we learn from those who are changing the way we think about business. So sit back, enjoy. You're listening to Minutes with Mike.
Welcome, everybody, to Minutes with Mike. Our guest today, our very special guest, Asia Dang. Asia, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited.
Me too. We're going to cover something today that is dear to my heart. And as we unfold it or unpack it, I'm going to bring up my own personal experiences. So pause on that for right this second. But you are a founder, a content strategist. You've been on television, you've been in print, and you deal with financial planning. When somebody you meet comes up to you and goes, what is it you do? What do you say?
Wow, you make me sound so impressed. Well, it depends. If I talk to my popo who is 99 years old or even my dad, I tell them I'm in marketing because that's like they can understand that. Going into social media is just not happening. But for anyone else, I basically tell them, I guess I'm a content strategist and I use my platform as kind of like a testing ground to work with brands. So everything I post is either storytelling or educational or, product validation, product testing, seeing what works with my audience, what they're interested in. And for the financial planning side, that's kind of just, I guess, like a visible outcome of that because, I started not in financial content, right? I very much very much didn't know what I was doing, and that was kind of what people got engaged with within my financial content was me telling my own personal story about being in debt and how I was working out of debt. And that was really interesting to people because that in itself is something that they can relate to, but not something that this was what, maybe like 8 years ago. So at the time, no one was doing content like that, especially content on such a taboo subject. So that's what I tell people. And actually I'm now starting to transition out of full-time content creation. I've been doing it for 10 years and I'm making moves to see what's next for me. So I've been really trying to zoom in on what it is that I do best. So yes, while yes, I am like a content creator, and I make content, I think what my real job is translating complex ideas like money, systems power into something that people can actually understand and act on.
That is so well said, and, that's the part we're gonna talk about that a little bit later, but that financial part of, helping people with the, conversation that nobody likes to have, I'm gonna unpack all that later. That's one thing I'm super excited to talk about, but so I wanted to talk a little bit about the creator end of things, right? Like, so you started doing this. I should tell the audience, like, I usually do a lot of research on the people I'm gonna be speaking to just so I have some background in my brain as I'm talking, and I had the most wonderful time watching your videos, just going through it because it's so unique and it's coming from a perspective like, you certainly don't mind saying, "I here I didn't know what I was doing, and it shows because here's all the stuff that went wrong," which
Yeah.
absolutely engages the audience, and speaking from personal experience, I'm watching this, and instead of fast forwarding through it, I'm like, I wanna see what she says next, right? It's
I
really
appreciate that. That's really good to know.
it's just a wonderful way of sort of drawing in your audience, and, just looking at some of the stats I wrote, and I know you have a multi-platform audience of over 1,000,000, followers. How did how did that start? Because you probably started doing this, like you said, prior to even the word creator being born. How did it all start for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so my background is actually in television. I started out as a television host. That's what I went to grad school for. I graduated from SC with a master's in broadcast journalism. I wanted to be on television. And at that time, I was freshly graduated from grad school and I was getting opportunities through my work with Maxim magazine at the time with, Fox Sports, FX, and I hated it. I absolutely hated working in traditional television because they would hire me to kind of do one thing, but with all the red tape and all the processes I need to go through to like approve things, it was like absolutely draining to me and draining to my creativity. So I started posting on YouTube just as a way to kind of just get out my creative side, and I had full control and full autonomy on everything I did on YouTube. And eventually, that became something that I thought was just like a hobby into something much, much more. Trying to think of the year, the year. It's been so long, but I graduated in 2012, so probably 2013 is when I started my YouTube channel or around there. So it was no one was making money. It was the wild, wild west. It was so much fun. Like I really do wish we could go back to the days, even when TikTok was new, like all those things when platforms are new, it's when it's the most fun because no one knows what they're doing
Right,
and you
right.
can just do anything. And also when money isn't involved, it's less pressure. Yeah, and then when I got that freedom from social media, that's when I was like, "Okay, well, let's see what we can do here." And I haven't hosted a television show since.
With the way that things are transitioning or developing, I should say, today, right? Like there's this social selling aspect of it, right? And you make a good point. Like when content comes out and people are putting it on platforms that are just new platforms that just started, or people aren't really sure how it's going to be working. It is like the Wild West. Like people are just sort of throwing stuff up there, seeing if it'll work, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like we're although we're knee deep in it already because things happen so quick. Things like, TikTok shop and this social selling aspect of doing things, people are really starting to, navigate that. And a lot of these large brands, that are used to retail selling or selling, through their website or online are engaging these type of platforms. What's your take on that? How do you see that sort of unfolding?
I mean, on the brand side, I definitely think you need to keep up with the times. I do feel like they struggle a lot, just whether it's a small brand or, a Fortune 500 brand. I still think to this day, brands have a hard time figuring out how to use social media. So I understand that as a creator. there are just so many things happening on so many different platforms that I now need to figure out, what am I best at? Am I best at long form content? Am I best at short form content? Am I best at like what kind of content? I don't touch TikTok shop because I am not one to sell like that. I'm incapable. I can't talk for an hour. It's not going to happen. You're like, yeah, we're just going to chit chat. I'm like, okay, well, I normally get to the point very quickly. So I don't know how long this interview is going to be. So it's kind of just figuring out on both sides as a creator and as a brand, where do you best fit in this ever changing
Yeah.
environment of social media? And I think obviously the only way to do that is to try. Sometimes it fails. Sometimes you might see that something you didn't think would work works really great. But yeah, you just have to like go out there and give it a shot.
Springboarding off that with things like TikTok Shop, right? Like, and how when AI started to become a thing, you know, you were dealing with brand deals, right? Now, those brand deals, I would assume, are changing a little bit, right? Because what used to be a strictly content created by these creators or these influencers, now you're tying in with AI, which is developing these stories or developing this content from creators that don't even exist. It's just all technological, right? Like, maybe you could talk a little bit about that too. Like, you probably saw that started on why, right? Because AI is brand new again, but we're knee deep in it. Like, how
Yeah.
did you see that sort of coming, and how do you think that's going to change the rules a little bit?
I'm going to be honest. I actually don't think as a creator, it's going to change the rules too much because yes, depending on how you use AI, it can help you write scripts. It can help you build a shot list. It can obviously make up people. Like, am I AI right now? I don't know. Who knows? But
You know,
but you can tell. You can tell when something is mostly AI. I'm not even talking about like the person in front of you. I'm talking about when a script sounds so scripted. And audiences, if you have a platform that is built as a community, they notice that and they actively revolt against it. Like even within brand deals, I don't take AI brand deals just morally, ethically, I don't do that. But when I see my peers do it, I head right to the comments because I know exactly what it's going to be. And it's an active pushback of creators working in, at least publicly, with AI brands. So, I don't know. I also know that within the brands that I work with, specifically in the financial space, they're always like, we need to, do AI. How can we incorporate AI? But the people on the creative end are like, no, you do not have my permission to use AI to change what I say, to change what I look like, to do 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 do. So I think it's definitely a very different perspective from someone on like the business end versus someone on the creative end as to how important AI is going to be.
the videos I saw, I could, certainly the content is what drew me in and kept me to the page, but your very easy way about you when you share these different things. And the ones I was looking at were certainly personal experiences. The one I think I shared with you previously was, when you were moving from, you're a California native, I think, and you were moving to, was it Texas?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you had problems with the realtor, and you had problems with the big problem was with the guy who was doing the inspection on the home. And it wasn't like a woe's me, which a lot of them is. Like, a lot of them were like a, what am I going to do? Oh crap, woe's me. Somebody help me. Yours was more like a, here's what I did wrong, here's what you shouldn't do, and here's how it unfolded. And that was really the story to be told, right? So how about that? Like, people a lot of times are not comfortable with the video portion of getting the word out. They prefer a written form, or they prefer things that they can sort of look at and edit and change. You've done both, so how do you weigh both of those? You're more comfortable with the video because you don't mind the camera on you, and you certainly don't mind sharing your, personal content sometimes. How did that sort of develop too?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I use my channel as kind of like a diary. So everyone knows every aspect of who I am as a person, not necessarily me as like a wife. I try to keep those kind of separate, but they know me very much who I am as a person, what I believe in. And it's because I talk to them like how I talk to myself in my mind. Editing, like, written wise, I am very, very much more professional. I'm more edited. Those are just 2 different kind of aspects of myself. And I think for me, video is just more fun. Not to say that I don't edit myself on YouTube or, wherever, because I definitely do. I have a lot of footage on the cutting room floor of me saying things or doing things that no one will ever see the light of day. So I'm still very much edited. But I don't know. I think I'm specifically thinking about YouTube because you're talking about YouTube, but it's just like a really fun platform for me, and I think it's really exciting. We had this phase, I would say from like 2021 to like maybe 2005, people were very much heavily into the short form content. I think now it's swinging back to long form, and I'm very excited about that swing for sure.
Let's talk about the financial stuff, right? Like, so you sort of laid the groundwork when we opened up the podcast that people, me being one of them, and everybody I know, right? People are really sensitive when it comes to things like how much their earnings are, how much they're putting away, how much debt they have. Are they saving enough? Are they saving anything? How much debt do they have? Is that a lot? That's sort of that's a difficult stepping stone because nobody, just from personal experience, my wife's near retirement. We're getting up to that age, and I've been our financial planner all along, and I don't know what I'm doing, right? So now that I have all of this money, when I say all this money, I have some money put away. I have to sort of bring it together and sort of connect the dots on it. So we engage somebody that we know who introduced us to somebody, and they're asking for all this information that I'm not comfortably sharing. I wanted to dive into that a little bit with you. I'm just looking at the stats that I drew up to for the conversation, and you paid off approximately $200,000 in debt in 23 months. You launched MasterPlan in January 2021, right? Tell us what that is. Tell us what your idea was about that. Tell us maybe if you don't want mind sharing, like what was one of your struggles that thought maybe I want to do something like that. How did that go?
Yeah, so yes, I paid off $200,000 of debt in a little less than 2 years, and I shared that entire journey on YouTube. So when I started doing that, I was most definitely the first person of color, the first woman online to share that type of information. Now everyone's doing it. But back then I was most definitely the first person to do that. And that's what drew people in, is that for the first time they're seeing maybe not necessarily the same amount of debt, but they're seeing someone with student loan debt. They're seeing someone having to decide between rent or student loan payments. They're
Right.
seeing someone work through that in real time. And that was encouraging to a lot of people. The way that I paid off that debt, I'm very much a planner girly. I love a physical planner. I'm looking at my physical planner right now. That's just how I work. I like to write things out, and that's how I remember things. And during my debt-free journey, I realized that there is not a comprehensive budget planner that was made for and by someone that was actively getting out of debt. Like, you could open up any budget planner, quote unquote, and you could tell it was not made by someone who is going through the process. So I would take my regular planner and build out my own debt-free flowcharts and monthly budget charts and all those things. And it wasn't until after I paid off my debt that I kind of like realized people are always asking me about my planners and I'm always sharing my formats online. And I was like, well, I should just make one. And I did. I made a budget planner that I think still to this day is the best budget planner on the market or was on the market. And yeah, we sold out almost every launch and we've helped with master plan, both the digital and the physical planner. We've helped thousands of people help pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt with the planners. So that's how that started.
That's awesome. Do you think that people, because as you're saying this, it's popping in my brain and I have my opinion on this, but do you think people, like, I'm almost tempted to say, like, I would trust you more to review what I think are my financial goals and where I'm going and what I should and shouldn't do versus this person that I've been talking about who probably has a list this long of academia behind what he's saying and why. And there's certainly a part for that too. But there also is something to be said for genuine content where somebody's giving you feedback and saying, like, I've sat in your seat, don't panic about this. This planner is going to help you do that. Do you think people, for the most part, share that feeling, or do you get pushback from people that say, like, well, my finance guy says this, or my accountant says that, like that sort of stuff?
Zero pushback. Because who I'm talking to are the people that can't afford an accountant or a CPA
Mhm, mhm.
or and also I think there's something to be said about just the different ways that we communicate. Like my CPA, he's super nice, but he's very professional. I am not. And maybe people just learn better from someone who they view as a friend and a peer versus someone who they may perceive as judging them or telling them what to do. So, yeah, I mean, I think it does make a difference about who the message is coming from and how the message is told.
Does it transcend male, female, young, and old? Because you've mentioned more than one student debt, which I'm assuming a lot of people that, well, I don't want to assume, but I have four grown children. I put them through college. So a fair amount of the debt that we incur along the way is, I got to come up with X amount of dollars. Let me put it on the credit card for now as we sort of navigate this. Do you find it sort of transcends all that age and sex and everything else involved?
For sure, absolutely. Actually, when I started posting financial content, my audience was mostly male. 'Cause that was the industry I came from. I came from modeling. I came from men's magazines, but as I started, my financial journey, I still have comments to this day, like, "I was introduced from women. I was introduced to you from my boyfriend at the time, and we would watch your videos together about, your debt, and now we're married and having a baby, and we're debt free, so thanks for that." So, it's
It's
yeah, it's really interesting, and I also find it interesting that my main audience is between, like, 25 and 45, but when I get the older gals or the older gentlemen commenting on, like, "I wish I knew this 20 years ago," or whatever, it's really interesting to see the vast net that just honesty has to provide to people.
That's a great point too that you bring up. In high school, they teach you the basics of this and that and, adding, subtraction. But I never, you know, I went to high school in the 80s and there was no classes on taxes and pensions and financial planning, which, if I've heard anything a million times, it's, if the younger you get invested with your future, the better off you're gonna be, right? Time is on your side. Don't start when you're 50, start when you're 20, right? Even if it's a nickel and a dime here and there, right? So, do you find yourself in a position where, people you mentioned there was no pushback, but as you educate these people, as you sort of break down these barriers for them, do they realize they're sort of behind the 8 ball sometimes, for lack of a better term? Like, because you could probably tell, like, if you have this much in debt, plus your earnings are this much and you're this age, here's what you're gonna have to sort of an algorithm kinda almost gets built in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm behind the 8 ball, technically. I didn't pay off my debt or start investing until, like, my 30s. But my intention with my content is never to make someone feel bad about being behind. I know that there is very popular viral content about financial creators making others feel bad about their financial decisions. I am just not that type of creator. So that's
That's
why I always base my financial content specifically through my experience. So that's why there's always like, "This is what I learned. This is what you should do in order to do better than me." It's never me yelling at these people to like, "What are you dumb? Like,
yeah,
why are you so far behind?" That's not the content that I do. That's not how I talk to people. So yes, there is definitely people feeling guilty for being behind. But when it comes to financial content, for me at least, people respond better to, "Don't worry, I've been there. You can do it because I've done it, and this is how." Versus, "You're dumb. You're 20 years behind, and you're never gonna catch up."
yeah. I mean, yeah, you nailed it on the head. Like that, not only does it get you anywhere, but makes you feel worse than when you started, right? So
Yeah, I just especially with something that's so vulnerable like money.
you pivoted with the product line. You had physical planners at the word go that it was wonderful. And then
Yeah.
you pivoted to all digital. Was there a reason behind that?
Yeah. Gosh, I that was a really hard decision because the physical planners were our bestseller by far, and it's honestly the main product I use still to this day on a daily basis. But if we're honest, it's because I wasn't a business person. I am very much an idea person and I can execute those ideas, but being a business person is just a skill that I did not possess. And the whole, thing of forecasting and marketing on top of, my own personal social media and all those things is just like something that I had a really, really hard time doing. So I thought that just pivoting to mostly digital or only digital at that point would just be easier for me so people could still have access to everything that's available, like the physical planner just in digital form, but there was no pressure for me to, you know, contact my supplier 8 months before, like,
Right.
November and make sure it's here on time, and then I was a one-person show, so I did all the packing, the mailing, all the social, everything, and it was just, like, a lot for me, and I think that most creators like myself, all we ever did was merch, right? We would stick a design on a shirt or a hat or whatever, and we'd work with the 3PL to do everything. So we didn't really have to, go into the nitty-gritty of business decisions. And I was just not prepared for that. So yeah, it is a bummer. I do plan on reaching out to a few planner companies that I know personally to maybe just take the master plan budget planner and, have them supply it because I know people still really, really want the planner. But as for me, I know my limits and it's just not something that I want to do anymore.
It just goes to what I've been saying about you and, the authenticity of what you say, like, just the answer you just gave for that shows the type of person that you are and the type of, you know, true I don't wanna even say strategy, just the truth that you speak is coming from here, right? It's certainly
Yeah.
coming from here, but it's also coming from here. There was a quote that I found that you said where you said my channel is authentically just me and what I'm feeling, and that just comes across, again, from those videos I watch, but just from the responses you're giving here as well.
I appreciate that.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the entrepreneur end of things, right? Because folks that are watching this, if you haven't gotten the idea already, she doesn't like to sit still. She doesn't like to sort of sit back and let things unfold. She's very, active and busy. And I wanted to ask you like one or two lessons from that world of being an entrepreneur. Like that's a whole nother animal, like you just mentioned, right? Like you're good at many things. You can't be great at everything. And there are certain aspects of starting your own business that are just sort of beyond your capacity of workload, and maybe you go out and get somebody. Maybe talk about that for a minute. Just how did how did you find that unraveling when you sort of unwrapped it and you said, "I want to start to do this"? What things did you find yourself that you weren't good at that you needed other people to sort of jump in?
Yeah, for social media, I'm actually not really good at trends. It's not something that I do. It's not something that really interests me. I don't like posting content for the sake of posting it, especially on long form. There is always like a thought behind it and a lesson behind it. So I wish I was better at, spotting the trends first because I feel like I would have more subscribers or whatever, more views, but that's also not something that I desire to have either. Like, I'm not someone that needs to have a million subscribers. So there's that. And for master plan, yeah, I think what I said is I like building on ideas. I like launching ideas, but the whole back end of it, it's not for me. So I've always said that if I do launch, and that's not something that you know about yourself until you're in it. Like I honestly thought I would be a fantastic business owner. Master plan was actually kind of like what I thought I could pivot to in order to backtrack off of full-time social media. Like I thought I was going to be the CEO of Master Plan. And you don't realize what you like and what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at until you're in it. So I've always said that if I ever do launch another business, I would need a business partner to ground me and to do all the back end work that I do not want to do. Like, it's funny, my husband's who's also a creative, he's always like, why don't we have a business together? I'm like, because we're two creative people. None of us will do the back end. So I don't know like what you expect out of this company. It'll just be like really great ideas, but poor execution.
Yeah, it's funny too, and I give you a lot of credit for, going with what you really sort of have the energy for, what really drives you, because I think what we find much too often, especially in this social media space, is, folks that try it and get a little bit of success, think they can recreate that very easily and just sort of grind away on nothingness and nonsense and hope that it sort of sticks. And
Yeah.
we have our airwaves are now filled with millions of these different sort of pushes. But I give you credit again for focusing on what it is you wanted to do because you do it well. And in your case, really helping serve others too with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's definitely very, very important to me. Like, I don't do this for money or fame. Like, I don't particularly care about that. What I do care about is, affecting change, whether that's like individually or structurally. Those are the things that are more important to me.
What are you working on? What's next for you? What's the next thing that's right here that you want to share? I'm sure there's 50 thoughts in there. What's one that comes to mind that's next?
Yeah. So I am in another pivot era. I have been doing this for 10 years and I'm almost 40, so I've known that my time as a full-time content creator is coming to an end. It's just not something. I don't want to be a family vlogger. I don't want to be a mom vlogger. Those are things that I don't want to do. So I am currently in my pivot era, and like I said, it's kind of figuring out what I am best at. And I think that what I am best at is translating complex ideas and thought into something that is easy to understand and for people to, get excited about. So I'm currently trying to, and actually I think this is important to talk about because I was talking to one of my other friends in content creation, and we were talking about the future of content creation. And you know what? I feel like I'm always ahead of the game when it comes to ideas. I just have to say that. But we both decided that I think that, yes, while some companies and brands do work best with, working with creators, that I think the future of content creation is that some brands need to start building their own content creation ecosystem, meaning that they need to rely less on creators and build their own content and build their own strategy to keep within their ecosystem. So, what I'm doing now is I'm kind of pitching myself to companies that I know and like I trust to become kind of like a content strategist for them in order to help them build that. Because there's so many creators now and there's so many different types of creators, but the one thing I think brands need to do now is become their own creator, if that makes sense.
It does. What a great way to sum everything up. And if you haven't been on board with Asia Dang and sort of been following her online, you must. I wanted to spend 15 or 20 minutes watching it, and I looked up and I was an hour into it. I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. Like it's addicting. So, I really appreciate the way that you do what you do. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, if somebody wanted to hear more about, what it is you're doing, or if they're seeking your help, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. If you want to just see what I'm up to on a daily basis, all my social medias are at Asia Dang, AJADANG. Or if you would like to work with me in any sort of capacity as a creator or as a strategic planner, you can just go ahead and email me, asiadang@gmail.com. Very simple.
Awesome. Asia, thank you very much. This was awesome.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.